Official visit season is back in East Lansing, and they absolutely have to make a great first impression with these big names.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for ending your week and starting your day with us here at Locked On Spartans. It's your team in green and white 5 days a week right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And shout out to all you great everyday listeners out there. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below the visitor this upcoming weekend that you have your eye on the closest. We will get to all things recruiting here with recruiting expert Greg Smith of the Rivals Network. He's our national recruiting analyst out there. And we talked with him for a good 20 minutes, talk about, hey, who does Michigan State really have to sway in this first weekend? How are things looking just zoomed out? Is everything okay with recruiting? And then, guys, I know why you're really all here. It's to talk one of my favorite parts of the offseason. Kickoff times being announced. We will end the show with that. That's right. We don't want to just spoil everything and talk about all the sexy stuff right at the top here. No. We'll save the kickoff times for the end of the show. But before we are joined by Greg Smith, guys, let's just go through the 10 names really quick. We'll get more into these guys with Greg here. But just for a quick outline here before we get any further, these are the 10 guys visiting this first weekend here in East Lansing. It's 4-star commit, already committed to this class, Eddie Whiting, the 4-star tight end. You got highly rated 3-star offensive tackle Collin Campbell, a lot more on him coming up with Greg. And then 3-star Kaloy Kelly, 3-star defensive end Femi Tau-Sile, 3-star edge Corey House Jr., 3-star safety Braden Thomas, who is right now an Iowa State commit, 3-star wide receiver Elijah West, 3-star linebacker Braylon Hodge, cornerback, who's a 3-star, Jeremiah Favorite, and then 3-star cornerback as well, Kelsey DeRiso. So, guys, hey, that's a little rundown here. Those are the names. Let's get more into all this with our guy, Greg Smith. Folks, thrilled to be joined by a guy that's just not busy enough in life right now. This is Greg Smith, national recruiting analyst over at the Rivals Network. And Greg, as we are looking at 10 potential visitors on the schedule right now, it's very fluid this day and age. Right now, 10 names visiting East Lansing. I just draw my eyeballs straight to this guy right here. Offensive tackle, Collin Campbell, high 3-star kid from Arizona. Utah's after him. Washington's after him. 6'7", 280 pounds. And is this the top guy visiting campus in East Lansing this weekend, or is there somewhere that you're going to go with this one?
You know, it's interesting. That's a good call with Collin Campbell, and I'm always partial to saying go with the big boys up front because that's where it all starts. But Braden Thomas, the safety out of Ohio that is committed to Iowa State, I think that's a good call out. I think that he's one that I've kind of got my eye on for a couple of reasons. One, I think he's a pretty talented player. But then the other thing is that I think that Michigan State has a really good chance with him to kind of flip him away from Iowa State. And so anytime someone is a potential flip candidate, that's a big deal. But I do like Campbell as a call out. And in part because of those schools that you mentioned that are also recruiting him, those are schools that do very well with offensive line. And that's something that I like to look at when you talk about kind of these recruiting battles. Like, are you in recruiting battles at positions where those other schools are also known for doing a good job? That generally should tell the fan base that they're on the right track with those types of players.
We're big into looking at the peer groups of other offers, who else is getting official visits too. So yeah, I'm glad, someone that's an expert like you can back that up. And that actually rings true here, is that you got to look around here. And hopefully it works out because, it didn't work out with Gregory Patrick, of course. Kelvin Obot was a dream for about 6 seconds, and then, he went elsewhere. But I got to say, I know that 4-star tight end Eddie Whiting is also on campus.
I was going to mention him.
Because he's committed, but there's also a bunch of other schools after him. What's the read on that, you think?
Yeah, so this is the thing with that I feel like I continue to write about 2 players in Michigan State's class that everyone is still kind of circling around. Eddie Whiting and Cade Kaufman, the quarterback, and for good reason. Both are very talented. Whiting has been, I guess, a little quieter, and probably because he's not a quarterback. Quarterbacks just tend to kind of make a little bit more noise. But, when Michigan State got him, that was one with Whiting where I was like, oh, that's a really good get for them, that they can hopefully then he doesn't continue to blow up through the process for them. And then they can just kind of quietly keep him, get him to campus, and then it's all said and done. I don't know if that's going to end up being the situation. He's not really given a lot of indication that he's going to take many, if any, other visits. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on, right? That would be the first thing. If you know, this is the time for those kids to take those visits. So if he ends up on someone else's campus, then I would say Spartan fans start to raise your antennas a little bit. But as long as he's not doing that, he's solid in the class. But he is an important visitor because you want to get him back on campus around everybody, feeling the good vibes. And then that way, you know, you keep him in that class. He's a talented player.
Now, allow me to just stray away from the outline that I sent you before the show and just go off on a tangent here. I do know that you wrote about this kid, though, very recently, and this is Jack Janda from Michigan, tight end out of Catholic Central. Now, MSU already has 2 tight ends, Eddie Whiting, which we just talked about, Joey Cottle, the other one. This would be a 3rd tight end should they get Janda, who's visiting later this month. He's not visiting this weekend, but seems to be that he likes Michigan State a lot. I did see the Janda thing, and it just crossed my mind because I'm a panicker, Greg. Like, I worry about everything. It's like, is this smoke that they're not convinced that either Cottle or Whiting will stay in here? Or do you think that this is just a case where, yeah, Janda loves Michigan State. They're willing to take 3 tight ends. It just is what it is, and you need to calm the heck down over there, Matt. Like, is that it?
Yeah, it may be a little bit of both. Like, it could be a situation where they definitely need to cover their bases, right? And I do think that's very smart. I always think that's smart for schools because you just never know what's going to happen. But I do think that the kind of indication that I've gotten so far from talking to people is that they are willing to take 3 at the tight end position. And I think that those would be 3 really intriguing tight ends to bring in. Slightly different skill sets as well. I think that would be helpful too. But Janda, like, it really kind of took me back what he kind of said about Michigan State and just like how pro Michigan State he was. But it sounded a lot like that when you talk to kids that are really into Michigan State and that end up committing or that already have committed, they kind of say similar stuff. They love East Lansing. Everybody loves East Lansing as a college town, but then they love, I almost went there, side note. But then they also love the coaching staff. Like, they are big in this coaching staff, and they are believers in what Jonathan Smith has done in his past and what he can do at Michigan State. And so he sounded just like that. And I think that right now, I would say that Michigan State leads for Jack Janda, but he's still got those other officials. Wisconsin is a strong player there as well, for a lot of similar reasons. But I do think that Michigan State's in a strong position right now with him.
So he'll be visiting at the end of this month, just to reiterate that. But, you know, just to zero in on this weekend again, let's ask the question that you've probably been asked 50,000 times from other people that do, you know, work like this. Are we on commit watch for anyone, Greg, of these 10 guys? Or do you think it's a little too early in the game to even, you know, say that we should have our antennas up right now?
Yeah, I do think you should pay attention to Braden Thomas. I do think that that's one where, you know, I called him out earlier as a guy that I think anytime you have a committed prospect, basically, this is really the first big weekend of official visits. They could take them last weekend. It honestly feels like kids are taking official visits every single weekend. Like, it doesn't feel like there is a dead period anymore, but that's a whole different discussion. This is the first big one for all intents and purposes. So if he's taking an official visit somewhere else as a committed prospect that first real weekend, that kind of gives you an indication that he's really serious about checking out Michigan State. So it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up flipping sooner rather than later. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult because what happens, because it's the first weekend, is guys want to take other visits, but there are always surprises in these situations too, right? Where you end up just kind of getting blown away and you say, hey, you know what? I don't want to take any more trips. I just want to stick with, you know, commit to Michigan State and just kind of be done with it. So yeah, we'll see. But I do think that they're in line for some potential good news here coming up.
The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than with FanDuel Sports. Now, FanDuel, guys, they make it easy to stay in the game both before tip-off and live inside the game. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Look no further than Saturday's game, Pacers-Knicks, which I assume is going to happen. I'm recording this during the third quarter of the game, and looks like a beatdown. And when has there ever been a comeback in the NBA playoffs? And hey, if you're feeling hot about either of these teams, or let's say that it's already Pacers, and the Thunder. Well, it's never too early to get in on all that action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And guys, if you are a new customer to FanDuel, it gets even sweeter for you because right now it's the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet because if you win, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. $200 in bonus bets. Again, use them from everything to live bets, same game parlays. Get creative over with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, guys. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And, I'm just going to go through the locations of all these 10 kids because I was going to say, hey, this is interesting. But, Greg, tell me if this is actually not interesting whatsoever here because, look, here we go. This is where all these kids are from visiting this first week. And you got South Dakota. You have Arizona, Honolulu, Hawaii. You have Seattle, Memphis, Ohio, Florida, Colorado, South Carolina, Georgia. That's one kid from the Midwest region here. And does that kind of perk your eyebrows up as interesting, or is that just this day and age of college recruiting?
It is interesting to me because it's interesting with a program like Michigan State. You typically think of them as a team that's going to really heavily recruit in state, and they have. They are trying hard. It just happens to be that Michigan's talent, as it continues to rise, has been kind of in conjunction with Michigan State kind of going through this rebuild. So it's really tough for them to be in on some of those top kids right now. They're just a little early in kind of their trajectory as a program for that. But they are laying groundwork, and I think you'll see that pay off in the future. But while that's also happening, what you're seeing Michigan State do is strategically go outside of the region and try and pick off a kid from Georgia, a kid from Florida, like a kid from Hawaii. And I think that is smart. So it's not necessarily like it's not like abnormal or weird in any way, but I think it's smart the way that they're focusing to try and do it because it doesn't seem like they're shooting their shot with a whole bunch of kids outside of region. Like it's not like, hey, they're going to be running into Georgia in recruiting battles right now. And you're like, okay, why are they doing that? They're not doing that. I think that they're very smart and strategic in how they're doing it. And actually a team that I would kind of compare it to in conference is Illinois. Illinois does a very good job of this too, where they recruit in the state and in the region. And then for them in particular, it's Florida, where they like to really go down to Florida and get those underrated kids that they can develop and then bring up. And I think that Michigan State, you're going to see them try and recreate a similar formula.
So as we look, further into this official visit season here, one point that I've been kind of hammering home is there's a lack of 4-star visitors, like just for the whole month. Yes, you have Eddie Whiting. That's great. You have Gooden, who's, slated to visit starting on Monday, a 4-star defensive end. And Lord knows we need defensive end help here on this campus. But outside of that, like never mind just commits. Like even kids that are visiting, you don't see a lot of 4-stars. Is that underwhelming to you? Is this right on par with what you expect from a Jonathan Smith Michigan State program where they're at right now? Again, like, please, I know this is their first time meeting, Greg, but you can tell me to calm down if it calls for it.
I have told you once that we could calm it down a little. I don't know about this one. I think that this is good. It's tough because I don't know if it's 4-alarm fire time that you should be like super concerned, but I would continue to monitor it is what I would say. Like because of because of where they kind of are in the program trajectory right now, I don't expect a ton of 4-stars to be beating down the door to visit at this point. They've taken their shots. They're in the mix, and they do have a couple committed, and then a couple that have risen to 4-stars in the case of Cade Kaufman after he committed, right? So what that tells me is they're good at evaluating, right? This is a good evaluation staff. So because of that, you can cut them a little slack on not having all of the star power right up front. But at the same time, we do know that eventually that's going to come into play. When you then want to then catch, the Ohio States, the Penn States, the Michigans, now the Oregons and USCs of the world in the conference, that's just in conference, you're going to have to raise the bar of that talent level. I just don't know if we're there yet to have to make those kind of questions for Coach Jonathan Smith yet. But yeah, it's something to file and to put in the back of your mind, because I agree with you that eventually you're going to have to turn that on. But right now, it's not, a complete fire yet.
I feel vindicated. And look, I don't like it on here, panicking and saying hey, I wonder if this class will even be in the top 30, because you need 4-star first visitors. And then, hey, those visitors turn into commits eventually. But, like, you can't commit if you don't visit almost 97% of the time.
Very rarely, yeah.
No kidding. So, like, that is one thing that, like, I just was worried about. I think I really started to get a little antsy after the Kelvin Obot, did not put Michigan State on his top 5 list after he visited campus. It's like, oh, my God, where's the star power going to come? Oh, it's not. So I do wonder, like, what this means and whether this is, like a numeric ranking, like if they're in the top 30 or they get X amount of kids at X position, like such a broad question, Greg, but what would you consider a success? And I know this sounds foolish because we're 7 months away from signing day, but still, even zoomed out from our little blimp that we are in right now, like what would make this class a success in your opinion?
I would say in this case, top 35-ish. Okay. And then you want to be, to me, you got to start pushing in the top half of the conference. Okay. Like that's where you have to be. And it's funny when you start looking now at kind of what the Big Ten is with how many teams there are, it's not as easy as it used to be in that top half, because when they added those West Coast teams, you added 2 really traditional powers, or at least current powers in the recruiting world, in USC and Oregon. I know people get mad about Oregon and their status and where they are,
of course,
in the grand scheme of things. I know it's a thing for people, so I don't want people yelling at me. But still, the point remains: they are an elite recruiting program right now. And so when you add that to Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and then you have Nebraska, who always seems to recruit well too. Like you start to get, and then you're always going to have someone else kind of rise up. Like you start to get to, 8 or so schools pretty quickly. So getting close to that top half and being 35-ish, I think in this year would be really good. We'll see if they get there. They're going to need that star power, or they're going to need people's rankings to continue to come up as we continue to evaluate the players. But I do think that that's going to be difficult. I do want to say that. I don't know. I don't know if I see that for them this year with the way things are trending, because I feel like Michigan State's going to have to be a program that proves the improvement on the field. And then they've got more proof of concept to go to these players with and say, okay, hey, remember what we've done other places? It looks like we're doing the same thing here at Michigan State. Come be a part of that. I think kids would be receptive to it. Just got to get there first.
It's got to start winning too.
Right.
Hey, how about this? I got an idea, Greg. I just want to float by. Can we incentivize you to bump the rankings up a little bit? Like, do you take Venmo payments? Do you take gift baskets? I could help you. I could, bring a U-Haul to your house and help you move.
That might do it. You get some U-Haul situations going. That'll.
I'll be there tomorrow.
Excellent.
Joey Cottle, 5-star.
Right. All of a sudden, you're like, whoa! All their guys are 5 stars. Interesting.
Perfect. All right. Well, good. I'm glad we got the wheels in motion there for that one. I did, even though this is like quote unquote old news, I'm still not over it because I'm not a mentally well-adjusted adult that follows recruiting. The Cory Mockery situation, that still kind of bugs me a little bit. He went to Kansas. I feel like that's a recruiting battle. Michigan State should have won in their backyard. Priority kid. Everyone knows the story there at this point. Was that as bad of a miss for Michigan State as I'm making it out to be? Or do you look at how well Kansas is doing so far on the trail? Do you look at that relationship that he has with the receivers coach over there, and do you just chalk it up to the game? Like, what's your perspective on it?
That's a tough one. I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
That is
so it's bad.
You cannot. It's tough. Even with the circumstances, and each one of these situations has its own unique set of circumstances. It's tough to lose a kid that close to your campus that you've put that much time into recruiting. That really could have been another crown jewel of the class. That's a tough one, because then. Yeah. Him in the class, and I really like his game. I do like his game. The more I watched him, the more I was like, man, this kid could be pretty good. Yeah. If you had paired him with Cade Kaufman, with Eddie Whiting, you see what happens with a couple others. You're starting to really cook there. I would have liked that. To lose him, and after that time, and I get it that he has the relationship with the coach over at Kansas, but we got to be real about these situations in 2025. NIL played a factor in this, and so that is also a situation where, as you're starting to put these classes together, and we're talking about them being able to potentially get elite talent and figure out how to get them on campus, that NIL component is another thing that you're going to have to get straightened out as you're up against teams that are kind of in your peer group in Kansas that are now outspending. Now, Kansas is also in a unique situation in their own right because kind of like Michigan State, they are a big-time basketball program, but Kansas has now decided that they're going to take some of that money from basketball and spend it in football, which has made the Kansas people a little upset in some circles. But that's a whole different thing. But they're getting results because of that, right? You're seeing that now people are like, okay, you know, Lance Leipold has had success at other places. He's been up and down at Kansas, but they're going to start paying and they're improving on their facilities and stuff. Like we can see it coming together. I think Michigan State's going to probably have to address the NIL situation because that was I think a big part of what happened in this situation.
Interesting. Gotcha. You know, just on the topic of NIL, and this is the last question. This is just more of a personal preference question. Like, is it more fun covering recruiting like in this day and age right now in 2025, or do you wish you could hit rewind and just go back to simpler times? Because I know what my answer is. But I want
it's tough, man. There are things I don't even know if. I think the simpler times would be appreciated. Let's put it that way. Like I agree. It's a bear now because it's not just it's NIL in the portal. But the problem is that those things, we all know that those things are so kind of omnipresent in what's all happening. And we know how big of a deal both of them are. But the amount that people are willing to talk about it actually and give you real information about it, never mind the actual figures that people are getting. And if, you know, what schools are reaching out behind the scenes, like you just don't get enough of that information. And that's like, you know, I do this all day, every day, and you just don't get that enough information on that. And so, yeah, it was simpler, you know, even 5 years ago, right? And never mind, like 10 or so when I started doing this, it's like it was just a totally different game. Like it really is. It could not be any different than what it was back then. So, yeah, the simpler times would be appreciated. It has totally changed. It doesn't make it bad per se. It's still fun to follow and cover, and there's always something going on, and there's always stuff changing. Yeah. But because of that, it makes it very difficult to kind of keep up with. And I always empathize with fans over that, too, that I don't know how your average fan keeps up with it. And I've asked people, like I've talked to my dad about this, like, hey, how do you keep up with the portal? Like, how does that? And he's like, you really don't. I wait for like people to tell me recaps of what happened. And then you kind of just figure it out.
I'll be driving to games, you know, the opening game, and I'll have, you know, the people I'm in the car with say, hey, who do we get this offseason, by the way? Right. Like for kickoff game 1, which like what a healthy way to root for a team, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say, you forget that there's a ton of people that do it that way, right? Like they're not like they are big time fans and they love the team and they want to root for them and see them do well, but they are not living and dying by every single transaction that happens. And you sometimes, because of what we do, you sometimes forget that there are people like that. It's really interesting.
Normal, healthy people with hobbies,
work-life balance. Like, what is this?
Like, it's crazy. It's just a messed up way to live, in my opinion. But good for them, I suppose. But hey, for everyone that does follow this, you know, just as ardently as we do, hey, thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. Now, we're not done yet on this show. We're going to bid farewell to Greg right here because, guys, we got to get down to the real brass tacks here, and that is kickoff times have been announced for 3 of the first games for Michigan State and the 4th against UCLA. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. That's right, boys and girls. One of my favorite moments of the offseason happened today on this blessed Thursday, and that is some kickoff times got announced. Some channels that these games will be on, they got announced too. And I know that's just like the smallest thing in the world, but oh man, when these tweets hit with the game times, I could just hear the crack of the beer cans in Breslin Center parking lot. I could just see the Melting Moments ice cream. I could see the money leaving my wallet right to the 50-50 salesman. I just need kickoff to get here, guys. So without further ado, let's get down to it right now. Your kickoff times for the first 3 games and then the 4th home game this upcoming season against UCLA. They're here 7 p.m. against Western Michigan, like we talked about earlier this week, because a nice little Easter egg was dropped by the MSU football social media team. That got moved from Saturday to Friday night yet again. And then, hey, well, don't go too far away from those bright lights under the Spartan Stadium sky, because 7:30 p.m. against Boston College on NBC will be the Week 2 game. And then Week 3, 3:30 against Youngstown State on Big Ten Network. And then for all you early birds out there, it's coming back. Noon games are coming back against UCLA in October. Which that sucks for the Bruins here. That'll be a 9 a.m. game to their bodies, but hey, that's great for us. And that will also be the homecoming game. Now, the channel for that game, to be determined. And there are also 2 other games that are kind of, sort of, somewhat barely scheduled. We know what times they won't be. So Michigan State's games at Nebraska on October 4th and at Indiana also in October. They're either going to be noon, 3:30, or 4 p.m. Eastern. So just additional commentary on these games. Why not? Just keep talking about them. I'm excited. You're probably excited. But starting with the Western Michigan game, you're probably hip to it by now if you're a Michigan State fan. But this is now a tradition of sorts here in East Lansing, kicking the game off Friday night under the lights of Labor Day weekend. And if you're new, if you're just kind of thinking oh, this seems like this happens all the time, well, it's going to be the 11th time in the last 15 seasons they will start on a Friday night in East Lansing. So I went over to Twitter. I said, hey, guys, they moved it to Friday night, week 1. How do you feel about the Friday night Labor Day weekend kickoff? With 4 answers. I said, absolutely love it, kind of like it, kind of don't like it, and then it's the worst. Almost 600 of you beautiful people voted, and yes, I think a lot of you guys are in my boat, which is absolutely love it. They came away with 64% of the vote. Kind of like it, 22.5%. So, it looks like about 87-ish% of people are in the same boat that, hey, they like the Friday night kickoff. Now, kind of don't like it, 8.4%. And then a 5% clip, we're saying that it's the worst. I can't disagree with that more. I know it's a kind of a weird hill to die on, but there's nothing better than, hey, Friday night, go to the game. And then if you have Labor Day weekend plans, just go to wherever you're going, either back home, go to your lake house, your cottage, what have you. From the stadium, get in late Friday, you have all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and however long you want to stay there Monday. It's great. And it's also kind of like getting the first game of March Madness, like our Michigan State Spartans did not too long ago against USC, I believe is who it was. When you have those early games, when you're one of the first teams to bat, you just kick back and relax and enjoy the rest of the college football slate should things go well. Michigan State currently a 17.5-point favorite against Western Michigan. But, yeah, I just like getting it out of the way, under the lights. The vibes on campus also can't be better than they are on that evening. And I was debating if I was going to, just say this. I don't want to give away all my secrets here, but I know that you could only start tailgating at 3 or 4 whenever they do it. It's not like a full day of tailgating because got to worry about the students or whatever. Anyway, extend your tailgating by going golfing at a nearby course starting at 11 or noon. Get out there on the course, and who cares if you're bad at golf? It's a great time to get the day started a little earlier. And all right, so the UCLA game time. First and foremost, this is Michigan State's first noon game since the 2023 season. They haven't played a noon game since week 11 at Indiana, and they haven't hosted a noon game since week 9 of the 2023 season against Nebraska. So last year, it was just the primetime Spartans, all 3:30, 4 o'clock, or night games, as a lot of you people did not like for some reason. Come on, guys. Playing under the lights used to be something cool, and I still like it, but again, who am I? Now, I got to say, UCLA getting the short end of the stick here because it will be 9 a.m. to the West Coast elite, right? I mean, that's how time zones work. So last year, UCLA, when they played in games on the East Coast that kicked off at noon, they went 1-1. I went back and I looked at it. They got beat pretty bad by Penn State, which of course they did. Penn State was good. They actually beat Rutgers last year, which I thought was pretty interesting. I mean, that's a scheduled loss, I thought. UCLA going into a sleepy environment in Piscataway, of all places, kicking the game off at 9 a.m. But no, the Bruins showed up for it, and they actually played pretty well here. So I looked around, too, at other Power 4 West Coast teams that had to travel to the East Coast and play at noon Eastern time, or 9 a.m., according to their body. Now, Washington, they went 0-2 last year. That was the only other Big Ten team that had to do that. Like Oregon, they didn't play any games at 9 a.m. to their time, and same with USC, too. Now, I also looked over at the ACC powers and the traditional teams over there, like Cal. They never played a game at 9 a.m., according to their body clocks. And then Stanford only had to do it once at North Carolina State. It did not go well for them. So, microscopic sample size of just 1 year of teams kicking off at 9 a.m., but that's what we got for you. UCLA, they went 1-1 last year. Hopefully this is going to be some advantage to our Michigan State Spartans, though. So there you have it, guys. That's the lowdown. I know you guys just, slept through all that recruiting talk. Who cares about recruiting these days? I know you guys were here to hear me talk about kickoff times. But hey, you know what? You got the best of both worlds here, right here at Locked On Spartans. Now we will be back at some point next week, which is when we're going to switch to a 3-day-a-week clip. Most likely, it'll be at least 3 days. There will be some weeks where we have 4 shows, might even be some we have 5. But yes, it is the off season. We're going to start toning it down just a little bit. But hey, the content is still going to be hopefully what you think is top notch. So guys, we will be back to start next week. We're going to have friend of the program, John Kirby, on one of these early shows. But until then, guys, take care of yourselves. Love you all. Have a great weekend and go.